So just so people know, the main, I guess, argument on the other side is, hey, this is a medieval forgery. That somehow in the medieval ages they did some sort of painting or in some sense dyed it or whatever to transpose this image here, and it doesn't represent anything from the first century. So that's what Joe's referring to here. But so I understand this because I'm a little bit acquainted with this, but again, no expertise. You have a fiber, right? And obviously when you put it under a microscope, you know, it's got layers. And you're saying this image is only on the very top part of that layer.
Right.
Whereas if there's a painting, if I take a paintbrush and paint something or dye it, that stuff's gonna bleed through. Like,
Exactly.
same thing as like if I get a stain on my shirt,
Right.
it's gonna go through and it might hit my undershirt because it's bleeding through.
Right.
All right. Now, so my question to you is, if Jesus is or whoever is wrapped in this thing,
Hmm.
is that image on the side that the body is or on the other side, on the exterior? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's on the inside.
Okay.
So where the front part of the body touched the cloth, the part of the cloth was over on the top of him, and then the other half was underneath him.
So if it
But
was doing kind of like a bleed through, it would be going from the actual skin out of the cloth. That's kind of the direction of the way it's going, even though it's very much just on the top layer of that thread.
well, the scientists actually think that that the markings of the blood were were contact. In other words, the blood, there was blood on the body, and then it soaked into the cloth. That does go through. The
Okay.
image itself, though, only stays on the top several thousandths of an inch of the fibers.
Hmm.
So there seems to be two different mechanisms, and there even seems to be image where the cloth possibly didn't even um, touch the cloth. So in other words, the cloth would have touched the nose, of course, but possibly not the eye sockets. But you still have the images of the eye sockets.
Sure.
So it almost seems to be some sort of vertically collimated short-term radiation burst. I mean, nobody can figure it out at this point, and we
Hmm.
may never be able to do that. Um, that's one of the mysteries of it.
Yeah. So what I've read is like his left knee would have been sticking up a little bit. So you're saying like, hey, if his left knee is sticking up, maybe his right knee is not touching the fabric. However, we still have an image on the
Yes.
fabric of the right knee and the leg and that sort of thing. So that's what makes it interesting because you're saying it's not a contact. Whatever is making this image is not coming from a direct contact with the body.
Right, because if you put a wrap a cloth around your face and have any kind of liquid or paint or pick, and you once you unfold the cloth, the image is going to spread out. But we don't have that. We have the perfect depiction of the face as it was, which makes the scientists feel like it came out. One scientist said it was like a laser coming out of every pore of the body instantaneously, but of a very short duration. Because obviously, if you radiate a cloth too long, it'll destroy the cloth.
Now
So
this
it
is
seems to be short term duration.
yeah, and you're seeing the face here that I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yeah, so this would be the original, and then this is a negative, obviously, which is, when you get close up like that, it's like, wow, that's some detail. So is there any, eh, when we look at this, let's talk a little bit about what are some unique aspects about what we learned from that, like the injuries to the body that lead us to the point to say, that really sounds like what happened to Jesus.
Right. Well, the Romans crucified thousands of people. You can't say that everyone was exactly uniform, but what stands out about the shroud is that, when you compare it to the Gospels, of course, is that the shroud image shows a cap of thorns, and not a crown of thorns as we usually see in art, but a cap that went over the full head. All right, and that wasn't a normal part of crucifixions.
Now, is that something that you can see on this image right here?
You can see the blood, the white part in the top of the head. Those are blood stains. So you can see, and then the sort of like the three
Right up here.
figure, that's blood on the forehead
Okay.
from the head.
So you're
So
saying that it's a cap of thorns, not a crown of thorns?
yes.
Okay. Would there be any significance to that, or is it just a matter of kind of like that's an extra detail that we learned from the injuries of this?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, normally in art you see a circlet, but a Roman soldier is not going to take the time to nicely form a round circlet. I mean, he's going to
Hmm.
grab a clump of thorns and slap it on there. So the image of the shroud differs a bit from some of the artistic renditions of the shroud. And I guess the other big one in that regard is the fact that most art will show the nail going through the center of the palm, but experiments have shown that that can't sustain the weight of the body, and the shroud shows the wound more toward the wrist, possibly going through part of the palm, but going through the wrist, which is more secure.
And that's actually, consistent for people who don't know, with other archaeological findings of first century crucified people, is that that's where they would drive the nail through, kind of like you said, right there at the base of the palm or maybe even into the wrist. And in the Greek language, which is what the New Testament was written in, the word for hand, wrist, and forearm is all
Right,
the same word. So when you read in the New Testament, hey, he had nails in his hands, you could literally just as easily translate that he had nails in his forearm or he
right.
had nails in his wrist. So, in case anybody out there is wondering, if that contradicts what the New Testament says, just FYI. So,
Yeah.
continue.
Um, yeah, so it's the cap of thorns, the wrist. He's got a wound in the side, which matches to the lancia. The size of the wound in the shroud image matches exactly to that Roman instrument called the lancia from that period. There are scourge wounds, hundreds of them. Now the scourge usually had was usually three thonged and had bits of bone or metal, and tore out chunks of flesh. Now, normally when a man was to be crucified, if he was even scourged at all, it would be very lightly because they wanted him to die as a crucifixion victim, because scourging could get so severe that you could die from scourging. And if a Roman soldier scourged somebody that was supposed to be crucified and they died from the scourging, that Roman soldier would be put to death. But interestingly enough, the shroud image shows a severe scourging. But then you remember, if you look at the Gospels, Pilate had Jesus severely scourged with the intention of hoping that would make people feel sorry for him and they wouldn't call for his crucifixion, but it didn't work. And so Jesus was both severely scourged and crucified. So all those things together, matched specifically to Jesus. And probably I would say the icing on the cake with that is that, well, it's not specifically related to the wounds, but the fact that you have that image, and we don't have any other burial cloth in the world with full front and back images, and that we don't know how the image got on there, because if you even have a burial cloth, the most you usually have is blood stains, because the decomposition fluids normally would destroy the cloth along with the body. So all those things put together, and the fact that the image might suggest the resurrection of Jesus, I think you have to say that it's not a big leap of faith to say that this probably wrapped the historical Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.